What is up, Nets fans? Welcome to the Brooklyn Buzz. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, Jac Manuell. What's up, Jack?
Good news, Nicholas. I'm feeling a lot better than a couple of days ago when we were recording.
For a couple reasons, obviously Caris Levert is going to be okay, but you did just get a new laptop, so I'm sure it's a combination right there.
Oh man, life is so much better when I can buzz at a more reasonable. Doing it off my phone is fine, and I'm lucky that I have a decent enough phone. But being able to chat to you on like an actual laptop, it's just the little things, And
Yeah. So obviously, very happy to have Jack with his new laptop. And like you said, very happy for Caris Levert. Our last pod was on a terrible, sour note, thinking that injury was going to be really bad and possibly, hinder his career. But instead, he's going to be out a couple months. And actually, we're going to drop a pod about that with Matt Wynn, who discussed it from a medical perspective. That's going to drop a little bit before this one. But Jack, let's talk about tonight. The Nets did not show up against Miami. They lost the game 120-107. What are your thoughts on it?
yeah, I mean, I was sort of there's this intuition that I think all of us fans of sport just have about our team, and we feel like we know what's going to happen. It's just an innate sense, and I just didn't feel uh, very good about this one. There was a part of me that also said, "I'm like, oh, maybe if Alan Crabbe starts, he could go all right." Again, probably an intuition that I probably should have ignored, but a lot of different things to come out of this one, Nick. I know you watched it more closely, so for you, where was it lost, so to speak?
I think the energy and the effort in the first quarter, 37 points to the Heat in the first quarter, just things didn't go well. They started missing shots. They started getting lazy defensively. Then they, were able to make a run midway through the second, get it within 10 points, but they dug themselves in that hole. Big third quarter from the Heat. At the end of the fourth, Shabazz has a nice little run himself, gets it kind of close, within 12 or 10. The Nets just didn't have the energy. They weren't making the shots. Miami, like we talked about off the show a little bit, they're not a great team. The Nets just put forward a solid effort. They would have had a chance. Shooting 28% from three is not going to help. 8 to 28. At one point, I think the Nets were 25 of 72 from the field. They finished a little bit better at 40%, but just overall, just not a good enough effort to win the game.
Yeah, one of those performances where just nothing clicked offensively. I don't think you can really blame the Caris Levert situation because I think everyone's processed that there was, like we said, an element of positivity to what resulted from it all. And obviously, Matt went into that in detail with you. But what went wrong on the night in terms of other than energy? Give me some details about some players' performances. How was D'Lo? How was Spencer? That backcourt. What did Coach Kenny do in the absence of Caris Levert?
Yeah, I think from the start, the starting lineup was different. You had D'Angelo, Crabbe, Harris, Dudley, and Davis. Obviously Davis against Whiteside makes sense, but I think playing Crabbe and Harris and then Dudley, it put a lot of pressure on D'Angelo to create. And early on, he was kind of pressing. He started the game like I want to say 1 of 10 or something. Not a very good percentage. He finished 6 of 18, which isn't great. He missed a lot of layups. He was kind of just just out of sync, and the offense was just stagnant. I think some of that was, lacking Caris Levert out there. Some of it was guys not stepping up. And like you mentioned, Alan Crabbe continues to struggle, 2 of 6 from the field, fouled out of this game. He just looks very frustrated out there in general. It's just a tough performance to kind of watch him out there. We were hoping, like you said, that he'd kind of bounce back in the starting lineup. That wasn't the case. Harris had a pretty solid game. Jared Dudley had okay moments. It was just like overall, there just wasn't a good enough effort, though, from like Spencer Dinwiddie and DAngelo Russell. Spencer picked up in the second half, but in the first half, he didn't really do much. Same thing with D'Angelo.
Yeah, but you wanted them to put out their best performances when it really counts, and I guess the chemistry between D'Lo and Karras was really on in that Minnesota game. So I mean, it's going to take a while for them to reconfigure that for the coaches as well as the players themselves. But we do have that guard depth. We still have Shabazz there and such. Were there any positives to take from the night at all, Nick?
I got to see Rodions play a little bit in the fourth quarter, so that's always fun. No, I mean, there's always there's some positives. Carroll kind of struggled, but you see him kind of getting some of the rust off. Ed Davis is always fun to watch. Like I said, Jared Dudley had a couple okay plays. Spencer was solid in that second half. It's just like sometimes he's not aggressive enough in that first quarter, and they really needed scoring. And like I said, D'Angelo did some things well. He also did some things bad. Like he has a problem like missing layups, and we've seen it a couple times this season where there's shots he could just make at the rim and he doesn't. And like I said, Shabazz had a nice little run. We saw Kenneth Reed in this game actually get meaningful minutes, and I think this will kind of shut the Nets fans up for a little bit for asking for more minutes for him because he really didn't do much out there. He looked like an undersized big that missed a couple of layups.
Yeah, for sure. If you were Coach Kenny, Nick, would you have put Alan Crabbe in the starting lineup?
I understand why he did. Like, I think,
Yep.
Caris Levert's out. You have an opportunity to try to boost Alan Crabbe's confidence. It just didn't work. Moving forward, maybe they should change it. They should maybe go with Spencer or at least Amari Carroll or someone out there. Like I said, I think it puts a lot of pressure on DAngelo Russell to create everything for the offense when he's really the only guy out there that can handle the ball. Joe Harris isn't bad, but he's not a guy that's going to run offensive sets for you.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, I sort of expected it. It's sort of the name that fully sort of checks out. I mean, I'll probably in time, like you mentioned, Damari Carroll started, pretty much all last season whenever he was out there, still finding his footing, but he's savvy enough, and even at his floor, I think Damari still does enough good things. We heard Sean Marks speak before the game about, and Coach Kenny as well, speak about Alan Crabbe before the game, saying that they had the confidence in him and just to focus on the defensive end. And a lot of players do that, and the offense does come. It just hasn't happened for Crabbe. In terms of that center position, Nick, Ed Davis starting. Obviously, he still played, 17 minutes, so he didn't play any really excess minutes that he normally does. What did the Nets lack, obviously, in the absence of Jared Allen?
Rim protection. They lacked in the Timberwolves game. I think there was a lot of layups at the rim for Miami. Some of that was just bad defense, but some of that is used to having Jared out there. Ed Davis isn't a bad defender, but he's definitely not the help defender or rim protector that Jared Allen is, and obviously that stuck out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Sarah Kustok who said at the beginning of the Timberwolves broadcast, the game before, that like Jared Allen is the best rim protector statistically in the NBA right now. So if you lose that, I mean, Jared Allen, obviously it's still a very small sample size, but he has been absolutely phenomenal in that role that he's provided. And with him and Davis, we are, a very strong core and when it comes to that front court. But you add in Kenneth Faried, who's still finding his footing and, his role within the Nest organization. I think we certainly did lack there. But Rondé Hollis-Jefferson's game, Nick, on paper, doesn't look too bad. Nearly gets a double-double, has a few assists, couple offensive rebounds. Tell me about Rondé's night.
Yeah, Rondé actually had an injury scare too at the end of the second half around the same time that Karras got hurt, and he kind of went down awkwardly, non-contact injury, but he came back in the second half. I mean, what I'll say about Rondé, he didn't play an excellent game. He made plenty of mistakes, but he played super hard. The energy was definitely there. There was a couple layups he missed, defensive assignments he kind of messed up, a couple balls that kind of got away from him. But, it was a good hustle performance from Rondé, but it's not enough that's going to get you a win. It's not like the stats, I think, look a little bit better than the game he actually played.
Yeah, I think Rondé can have those nights, and he can also have those opposite nights where he's playing really well and providing some really good defense, but he's just not, it's not reflected in the box score, which I would probably prefer, similar to like an MKG style,
Marcus Smart type,
or Marcus Smart. I think Rondé needs to become, and this is just based off of his game in general, like a sort of pure defensive stopper, because in the absence of Treveon Graham, we don't really have really great defenders, and our defense has been very, very lackluster over the past couple of games. So, and obviously Caris Levert as well, who has, extended his game in that department as well before hit that injury. Nick, were there, in terms of, would you play going forward? When does it get to the point where Rodions starts to get some more time? Or is it waiting to see sort of proposition for when Treveon Graham is back? Because then he can sort of soak up some of that front court minutes, whether it's at the 3 or the 4. Obviously, he's undersized, but we saw plenty in the preseason where he would close games as well. So is it still Rondé? It's going to be Rondé until we see Treveon Graham back? Or would you give some more minutes to Rhodey?
I think I personally would give some more minutes to Rodions. I mean, I understand why Kenny wants to go with Rondé. It's like the guy he knows, he wants to get him back in rhythm because obviously Rondé missed time. And then when Treveon Graham comes back, it becomes even more of a competition. But I think you do have to find minutes for Rodions. Not because like he's so much more talented than the other guys, but the energy he brings. You can just see the spark that he has when he goes out there. He's just very fearless, goes in there for the offensive boards, pokes at the ball, he'll have a couple rookie plays out there, but I think it's worth it. And I would kind of elect to go with him more, especially because his willingness to drive as well. That's something we're going to really miss with Caris Levert not being in there. Rodion showed early in the season he's willing to drive a little bit out of control, but I'd like to see him get more minutes.
Yeah, I think I certainly would too. And a lot of other fans would as well. He's been, in the glimpses that we've seen this season, including the preseason, he's been, really great and exceeded our expectations. But is there a solution to this Crabbe problem, Nick? What does he need to go to the bench for Spencer or Damari? Can you see this changing anytime soon? We spoke about last season and in comparison, but is there a direct correlation with that? Because he hasn't shown really any signs of improvement. It's almost like he's plateaued of sorts, and he's just a defender who can make a couple of threes.
Yeah, and his defense, I'll say, is inconsistent as well. Sometimes he gets caught under screens, gives up 3-point shots, has dumb fouls. Like, I mean, it's just kind of a wait and see thing with Crabbe. I think I would probably take him out, maybe one more game starting, or maybe 2 more games, start him on these back-to-backs. Doesn't work out, then I think you go with Spencer and you try to improve that chemistry with him and DAngelo, because that's your best bet for the next couple months without Caris Levert. You can't really start Shabazz Napier at his size. He'll get abused defensively. And like I said, I think it's putting almost too much pressure on DAngelo when he's the only playmaker in the starting lineup.
Yeah, completely agree. I think DAngelo almost works better as an off-ball guard a lot of the time, because he can, he's good when he runs the ball up the court because he's a great facilitator, but then he can dish off to a guy like Karras because he has such great capabilities in that sort of sense as well. But in relation to Karras, Nick, obviously it provides really great opportunities for DAngelo and Spencer. We saw Spencer relish that role last season in the absence of D'Lo and Jeremy Lin. Now we're comparing to our 2 cornerstone guards right now in Spencer and DAngelo. Who do you think takes the opportunity who do you think takes the opportunity the most out of these 2? Because they've got a really great shot at sort of cementing themselves as being a future Brooklyn net for a very long time, because Karras isn't going to be back for a few months at least. So who do you think it's more important for, and who do you think personally will relish that opportunity?
Well, I think it's more important for DAngelo because I think he has more to prove. I think Spencer's already proven that he's a very good backup point guard in this league, and that'll still get you paid in the summer. I think DAngelo, there's still question mark. He's this hot and cold guy. Now, I really don't know who's going to capitalize on the opportunity more. DAngelo has the talents. It's a great opportunity for him to really show up, but it's also a lot of pressure. And Spencer, like you said, did it last year. And both of them, it's going to be a little bit different because they will have each other. So that combination, that chemistry is going to play a big factor. I guess if I was betting and I wanted to play the safe bet, I guess I would go with Spencer because we already saw him step up last year. But DAngelo, it wouldn't surprise me if he was the one to take over because he does have more talent and there's more of an upside there.
In terms of DAngelo's game right now, Nick, what do you think he's doing well? What do you think he's not doing well? And what do you think will naturally improve?
Well, that's a great question, Jack. I think, it's very inconsistent because some games he's doing everything well. There's games where he's, passing, playmaking, shooting, driving, playing solid defense. And then there's other games where he's not doing those things or he's doing one of the 5 things. So I think for him, just like consistency and getting to that level, I think he's done a good job of getting in the paint. I don't mind the teardrop shot. I want to see him make his layups because, like I said, he's missed a lot of layups this season. Get a little bit more consistent from 3. Stay active defensively. We've seen him poke the ball out numerous times. It's like it always happens in like the first quarter, the first half of the game. Like DAngelo, 4 quarters, get a couple steals, get yourself some easy layups, get things going. I think sometimes also making sure everybody touches the ball and then maybe go to work instead of just trying to like go down the court and then score right away. He's still kind of trying to find his rhythm. So I think overall, most important thing for me is consistency and just stay consistent also on the defensive end if your shots aren't falling.
Yeah, I think I would agree with pretty much all those points, Nick. I think aggression as well. I think he can be, like a lot of young guards, a little bit timid and sort of trying to find his way and overthink the game a little bit. I know Sam Vecini of The Athletic, and he's got a podcast as well, was saying that, and he's a great analyzer of young talent, he thinks that DAngelo has lost a step. And obviously we saw him, very closely early last season before that knee injury. Do you agree or disagree with the comments that Sam made?
I will say also, and I've seen people on Nets Twitter point this out as well. So, shout out to them as well. But DAngelo wasn't the greatest athlete. I will say maybe he's a step slower, but he also plays a slow game. It's not like he plays a game with speed, so it's kind of hard to tell. I never was very impressed with his athleticism, even when he came, his first couple games before the injury. I think that's an area where he possibly can improve. I mean, sometimes there's physical restrictions on you, but I just feel like there just needs to be a little bit more explosion in his game sometimes, especially with the way he's able to kind of change pace. If he was able to explode once in a while, it would throw the defense off. So I don't really know, to be honest.
Yeah, that's completely fair. I mean, we look at these sort of guards who are, all athletes in general who are quote unquote subpar athletes. They're not LeBron James or they're not, whoever those, or Giannis Antetokounmpo. but they still have a real effect. Guys like James Harden, Luka Doncic has been awesome this season, despite the fact, he's not an athlete. And, even in Nikola Jokic, they make up for it with elite elements of their game. And I think D'Angelo, I mean, this might not be that hot of a take, but I don't think he's elite in necessarily any area yet. He is a great passer, but he's not consistent enough of a passer, like you were mentioning about that consistency, to classify himself as elite yet. So his three-point shooting as well. I think Anthony Puccio posted on Twitter, he's one of the best guards in terms of what he's putting up in terms of his box score and his perimeter shooting. Do you think that's sustainable? I know you pointed out to me when we were chatting a little bit in the DMs that he has been a little bit hot and cold himself.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sustainable because he's just so hot and cold. Like I said, tonight, 0 of 3. The night against the Timberwolves, he was like 9 of 15. The other nights he's 1 of 5, 1 of 6, then 2 of 5, 2 of 4. It's just like you don't really know. Obviously, not everyone's going to knock down the 3-point shots every night, but it just feels like his game is so hot and cold where he has, like you like to say, his game has like a low floor and a high ceiling at the same time. So it's like you really don't know what you're getting into game to game, and that's not something you're looking for in your starting point guard. This is like why it's a big season for him, because he needs to find consistency. And I see people on Twitter talking like, oh, the Nets don't want to be successful or it's Kenny's fault. And like I said earlier in the season, some of it's on D'Angelo. Like you have to make shots. Like 6 of 18 is just not going to cut it.
Yeah, I think he needs to be more efficient. And I think he could learn a thing or two from Spencer, who was a massive volume shooter last season when he had that opportunity, but has tinkered his game somewhat this season to be a little bit more effective and making the right shots and driving like an absolute madman. When he does that, he looks at his most effective. And, D'Lo is proving, we know he's great in that floater range. He's got a decent pull-up shot. That pull-up three needs some development. But I would also be a big fan of him sort of getting to the hole a little bit more, taking some more free throws, because I think that's when the Nets aren't a great free throw shooting team, but it just makes it easier and it puts pressure on the opposition to defend you when you keep on pushing. That's what Karras has done so well this season. That's what has become a real elite part of his game. And I guess speaking of Karras, that piece by Zach Lowe was one of the best pieces. I mean, everything he writes is absolute gold, but some of the stuff in there was absolutely awesome. For you, Nick, does Caris Levert provide us with a chance to attract free agents a la Kevin Durant and others?
Yeah, well, just to touch on the Zach Lowe piece, like you said, Jake, that was an amazing piece. Probably one of my favorite pieces all year long, especially like you said, from a guy like Zach Lowe. And it had a whole bunch of little tidbits in there of like little sneak peeks at things. And like you said, I think Karras can help the Nets get, a star because he's a two-way guy. You look at him as possibly maybe, best case scenario, the second best player on a championship team and, more in the middle, something as like your third best player. He's shown the ability offensively, defensively, do the small things when necessary too. He's not a guy who needs the ball a ton to be effective. We saw him run the break, make cuts to the rim and stuff like that. And he seems like he's very likable. Like we talked about on the previous show, I was surprised to see so many NBA people reach out to Karras when the injury happened. He's not this flashy guy that has a big social media following or anything like that. You can just tell that he's well-liked around the league from all different types and as well in the organization. So I think Karras's character and his also play on the court should help him attract players.
Now, KD, Nicholas, give us obviously they're both with Rock Nation. They both have a history with each other. They've worked out together. They have a known relationship together. We're going to go down this route, obviously. We're going to go down a plenty this season. But Kevin Durant, have his chances increased for you since we've done some preseason pods, or are they about the same?
I would say one thing, talking about the Zach Lowe piece, he mentioned that KD loves Levert. And I mean, I'm not surprised about it, but it's not something I knew for a fact. And now it seems like something that's actually more realistic. And like you mentioned, obviously Golden State and all that with Draymond Green. And it seems like Kevin Durant's more likely to leave. And, the Knicks young players maybe aren't having success. This is the bigger destination in New York, and maybe he wants to come here. There's been talk about the Clippers. I would say I wasn't very high in KD possibly coming to Brooklyn before the season. Now I at least have given it thought. So I'm not like confident in it, but I've given it thought as a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, he's the free agent this season if you want to classify Kawhi and Clay, obviously, who are still in that. But KD is, 1A in terms of best player in the NBA. And despite, all the rumblings that are happening in Golden State now, he is still one of the best players to ever step foot on the court. And I think the reason partly why he vibes so well with Caris Levert is because I think that they're somewhat similar characters in terms of they're introverted somewhat, but they have this real desire and love for the game. And I think that is part of the reason why Katie doesn't get along so well with a guy like Draymond. He doesn't want, the attention. He's, very secluded, it seems, from the outside looking in. He doesn't really care. And I'm reading, I think it was CBS Sports, someone put out a tweet that was saying that, even the team doesn't want to sort of lure him in free agency. They don't want to pitch to him because he doesn't seem like the best sort of quote unquote teammate, or like, he doesn't fit well within the locker room. Whereas I think he would be a good locker room fit in Brooklyn because he'd be the guy, but he wouldn't have this huge amount of pressure on him like he would if he were to go to New York. So he's a different cat, KD, and I understand why he vibes so well with Caris Levert, because he also was called Baby Durant as well back in his days in college in where was it again?
Michigan. Yeah,
Michigan.
They used to beat his teammates, and that's what they used to call him, was Baby KD.
So, I mean, all these things are boding well for us Nets fans, but we can dream, and the fact that we can dream is something that's really nice these days. But did you happen to see Spencer Dinwiddie's quote? I mean, you sent it to me, so I'm sort of playing off the fact that you actually sent it to me in person. But what did you think of the Spencer Dinwiddie quote of where he said, not KD, Caris Levert is basically, Coach Kenny's pet?
Yeah, I knew me and Kenny always got along well. No, I'm not surprised. Like, you can tell that he really. There was that one picture posted on Twitter a little bit where you see Kenny.
So good.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, when Kenny's like looking at him with a big smile. But like, why would Karras not be his favorite player if you really think about it? Like, he plays hard both ends of the floor. He picked it up defensively. He took major strides. He was in the gym every day. They said he's such a genuine person. And in that Zach Lowe article, it talked about the relationship, how, he accidentally FaceTime Karras on his birthday, and now him and Karras FaceTime every year on each other's birthdays. So it's just like Karras just seems like a really, really nice guy, and he's a super hard worker. So it seems like, he'd be the coach's favorite player. And he doesn't have much attitude either. Like, I've never really seen him get mad. We saw him get one tech this year, but I kind of liked it.
Yeah, and I mean, Spencer has this, a slight arrogance about him. Smart ass, and it's like, little cockiness about him that I love. And I think all Spencer Dinwiddie fans love, because he deserves to have that from where he's come from in terms of what he's built himself into being. A little tidbit that I didn't really prepare you for, Nick, anyway, but what have you thought of Spencer Dinwiddie's kick game this season?
Oh, I love the ones today. Shout out, rest in peace, Stan Lee. Huge part of my life. Growing up, I was a big Marvel Comics fan. I love X-Men. I love Spider-Man. Avengers movies are part of my life still right now. But I'm just thinking it's great. Obviously he's donating the shoes after the game, putting them up for auction and stuff. I love the creativity. I haven't liked all the shoes, I'll be honest with you, but at least half of them have been really nice.
Which ones haven't you liked? At Spencer Dinwiddie, we can't at you on a podcast, but if you do hear this, at OTG Nick is where he's at.
Yeah, I'll give you sneaker critiques if you want, but what do I know? But I think I really liked the ones tonight. I thought the Stanley ones. I definitely thought it was interesting when they played the Sixers and he did like an Allen Iverson shout out. It's interesting that he did the other team.
Yeah, I love the Prince ones the other night in Minnesota as well. The fact that they had a little sparkle on them. I love me a bit of glitter. I love me something that sort of pops a little bit. And did you happen to see the ones that he wore to the Creed 2 premiere as well?
I did. Yeah, I saw those on Twitter as well.
I thought they were really good. And for me, Nick, I'm loving what he's doing with the fact that of these new rules in the NBA right now, where there are no limitations onto what kicks, what shoes you can wear on the court. And, 82 games, we're 15 games in, and he's changing it up every single night. It brings a new element of excitement. It adds to his social media game. I mean, he's already awesome on Twitter and Insta, but, he's adding himself. He's getting, more love from guys like, Olivia, who's an awesome kick writer for OTGbasketball.com. And just the creativity, it's awesome to sort of, for him to have that outlet, get himself a bit of exposure, because he deserves it, not just from Nets fans, but he's getting some love from, around the NBA, around the Twitter sphere, because it's a really cool outlet. It's really, creative, artistic in different ways. And shout out to his brand. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but 67 more games to go and 67 more opportunities to see some fire kicks from Spencer.
Yeah, no, you mentioned creativity, and it is definitely a challenge, especially when you're worried about like the NBA season. Obviously, they have some free time, but 82 different sneakers. That's not an easy task to come up with and design them all and make them all kind of theme for each event. So shout out to him. That's really cool. Talking Spencer, do you think he should be in the starting lineup?
I'm hesitant, partly, Nick, because actually, you know what? I'm sort of was weighing up. I'm like, well, who's going to be our sort of bench spark? I have confidence in Shabazz Napier to be that guy. So I would personally probably insert Spencer in just to see how it goes. I mean, we spoke about it in earlier pods about their sort of plus minus. I think you take of that what you will at such a small sample size. But now I think you want to have a secondary ball handler like you mentioned. And Spencer has started before, and he's shown that he can be a real impetus there. I wonder if it takes away from his role and his mentality, because we saw last season and even earlier in the preseason as well, him sort of finding his footing. Most players will struggle at times, or not necessarily struggle, but find it difficult sort of adjusting to different roles and sort of having to go fluctuate in terms of what is asked of them. I would like to see it because he is a better player right now than Alan Crabbe. He adds more value. Maybe not. I think he's decent defensively, but he adds way more value on the offensive end, and especially in terms of us moving the ball and on the offensive end. And I think if you want to increase Shabazz's minutes, I think Kenny needs to do that. I think there's a couple of things where Kenny needs to start taking a few risks going forward, because, Karras isn't going to be there to bail him out anymore. And it's funny that, just after, 14 games, we're able to say that about, a third, fourth year guard. But I think he should be. That's just me.
Yeah, I agree. I think if the Nets have any chance of staying competitive and getting in the playoff race, they need the combination of DAngelo Russell and Spencer Dinwiddie to work. And their starting lineup, they're going to get the most minutes together. And I think it's important for the Nets to start games strong, because they're not the most talented bunch right now, missing their best player. Now they're not going to be able to have these comebacks late in game or anything like that. They need to start strong, and they need to get that relationship working.
Yeah, and I think you can always stagger the minutes. I think it's going to be a work in progress in that sort of sense. If you want to see, two ball handlers always on the floor at one time, try D'Lo and Shabazz. I don't think we've seen a combination.
Saw it very slightly tonight, just a couple minutes. It wasn't enough where you could really take anything away from it, but I could see potential being in that. The only thing I worry about Shabazz, like I mentioned, is tonight he got abused a little bit defensively. So that's, I think, preventing him from getting bigger minutes is just because of the size. But in small bursts, like, he's just great.
Yeah, and I mean, 26 minutes tonight still. I think that would probably be his season high, off the top of my head. So I think that he can easily play those minutes, again and again, because he's a great three-point shooter. He knows what to do. He just makes the right plays. And we've spoken, again and again about his energy. But, Nick, what needs to happen for the Nets to... In fact, I'm going to go a long-term sort of point here. If Karras isn't back by a certain point, do you think that the Nets should go down the tanking route? Obviously, that is the question. Our boy Flatbush in Atlantic put out an awesome show with Coach Kenny on it. By the time Karras gets back, it could be his bobblehead night, which would be awesome. But by, if it's February, March, do we tank for Zion, so to speak? I know my brother and Nick Busing, co-host of JBT, are all in on the Zion experience.
Yeah, I mean, Zion has looked amazing, so don't get me wrong. I wouldn't mind seeing him in a Nets jersey, but I do think it's too early to tell. The last game against Minnesota, obviously the team was emotionally, terrible. And now this game, they just didn't come to play. They looked out of sync. So ask me, let's say by the end of the month, I'll have a better answer on that. I think if you can maintain competitiveness and just, work with the culture, even if you're not going to make the playoffs, I think you kind of stay with it. But if things are just terrible, D'Angelo's not working out, Spencer's not really stepping up, it might make sense to just trade some of the young guys, get some more picks going into the offseason with a lot of cap space, a top 5 pick, and, things are looking nice. Even if they do tank, though, I don't think they'll be as bad as Cleveland or like Atlanta. Like, it's going to be hard to be that bad with the players they have, especially with the veterans.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of those vets should and will be on their way out once the front office gets their shit together. But this is a Brooklyn podcast. We're not going to shit on other teams. We're just going to talk our own team up. But Nick, any final thoughts before we end this one?
Yeah, Jack, I got a question. Do you think with Levert being hurt that we could possibly see Musa in a little bit? Like, obviously, he has some playmaking potential. He can drive to the rim. He can give some scoring that we need. The development probably hasn't been quite there. That's why we haven't seen him. But do you think the opportunity will pop up for him down the road?
It could, Nick. I think it, like you sort of mentioned about the tanking sort of question, I think it's going to come down to how he continues to improve within the G League. And he's done really well there. I think him, Rodions, love that he's got this budding bromance with my boy Mitch Creek. Shout out to all the Aussie NBA players out there right now. But I think it's going to come down to that. And I mean, it's these mini experiences where he's playing some junk time can be good for him because it allows him to sort of know what is expected of him. But occasionally, if there are times where you can be sort of thrown in with the Wolves, I think that at times that can be a beneficial experience for some NBA players. Rodions was sort of done that a little bit in the preseason. I would have liked that to have happened to Janan a little bit more, but obviously we were taking, the preseason experience, sort of working on the rotations and such.
And he had the injury too.
And the injury, obviously, as well, not being able to sort of get out there as much as he would have liked. So I personally would like to see it because, Coach Kenny himself didn't think that Karras could be, a ball handler and a floor distributor. We've seen Janan do it, for his country in Bosnia, and Nicholas Letourneau of netsrepublic.com and Nets Daily has posted, plenty of videos on that. So I'd like to see it. It's going to be a question of if Coach Kenny is going to have the confidence in him.
Yeah. You mentioned, we've seen the videos, we've seen the highlights of him doing it. I think the one thing probably holding him back is maybe physically. He might not be ready for the NBA size-wise and just banging in there. He might not have the strength to do it. That would be maybe the one reason he's not out there because I think his skill set could help the Nets, even though very raw. It is something they're going to miss with Levert. It'll be interesting to see who really steps up in their game. I'm intrigued to see Jared Allen when he comes back. Obviously, he missed the last 2 games with illness. When he's back, if he tries to be a little bit more aggressive, knowing Levert's out.
Yeah, Jared, you're gonna get on that tee, bro. And my next door neighbor
Get
has
some
this.
airborne.
Yes, definitely. Get all the right remedies into you. Get some soup. Get some nice tea. For me, I'm a lemon and ginger dude. My next door neighbor, grows his own honey. That's for me. I've been a little bit, off of lately in terms of teaching. I need my voice, not just for podcast, but for teaching. And I have a teaspoon of that honey every day. Gets the vocal cords nice and ready. And hopefully, Jared Allen obviously doesn't need it. Maybe for communicating on the defensive and offensive end. But hopefully he's back against Washington because we don't want to see another 30-39 from Dwight Howard.
Yeah, definitely not. And I know that game has a little bit more value to you, but we'll save that for another day. As always, Jack, pleasure talking Nets with you. Check us out, iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, NetsRepublic.com, and YouTube.